Hey, hello, I'm Yolu. Today we will be focusing on UV mapping our character. First of all, I will change my Blender workspace a little. I really like this flexibility of the Blender and I constantly change all the windows. Well, let's start cutting our models. My favorite way to cut models is with the Pick Shortest Path tool. To use it, you need to click on the edge and then while holding Ctrl, click on the edge at some distance along the path you want your cut to go. You'll notice that at the bottom of the screen will appear a window with options. To cut with this tool, you have to set Edge Tag to Tag Seam. Now those edges will turn red. And if you want to remove some seams, you can repeat those steps. Select the edge with the seam and holding Ctrl, select the next one on the path with the seam. Seams will be removed. And also, while I'm working, I like to have Live Unwrap to be turned on. You can find it in the workspace settings. Another way to create a seam is to select edges, press U and choose Mark Seam. Or if you want to remove the seam, choose Clear Seam. Since our model is almost entirely symmetrical, I will try to unwrap nearly all character parts symmetrically. When choosing a place for a seam, try to hide it as much as possible. Also, a good place for a seam is the place where the object's planes have a sharp joint angle. Usually, there will also be a change in lighting to hide your seam even more. We don't really need the bottom faces of the hairband, so I just delete them and unwrap without any additional cuts. The plugin I used is called Texel Density Checker. It's free and you will find a link in the description below the video. That's an excellent plugin if you work on many objects and have to keep the texel density consistent. So, what is the texel density? In simple terms, it is the size of your object's UV in the relation to the texture size. So if your object is small, then the size of its UV on the texture should be small too. Sometimes you will see that situation in games, when the floor texture is very pixelated, but the wall on the other hand is sharp and clear. That will be a great example of inconsistent texel density. Try to avoid this, but in the case of the character, you usually have the precise texture size you have to use for one character, so it doesn't really matter. And like with all the rules, you can bend this a little too. Sometimes I make some UVs larger or smaller depending on their importance and not on the actual size. So for example, the face is one of the most important parts of the character, so it's logical to make it bigger in the texture. But the mouth cavity is practically invisible to us, so we can make it smaller and save some space. I'm moving on to the body. The first thing I want to do is cut off the head and put it aside for later. Next, let's delete the half of the body as it's completely symmetrical and add mirror modifier. Now let's cut the arm at the junction with the body. Cut it along the length up to the hand and then around the hand. I'm cutting all the inside part of the skirt to make its UV smaller if I want to. And I move on to her legs. I don't really like the topology in this place, so I will remake it a bit. Once again, I want to draw your attention to the fact that it is never too late to remake anything, if you feel like it will be better that way. I'm cutting her legs and feet too. And now we can finally cut her head. The first thing I do is cut off the inside of the eyes and the mouth cavity. I'm selecting loops by holding Alt and clicking on the edge and then pressing U and choosing Mark Seam. Next, I'm creating a seam around her face. The face and the part of the hair will be the only asymmetrical parts of the model. And now I'm selecting her hair and pressing P to separate it from the face. Finally, I'm deleting the half of the model and adding a mirror modifier. Since the size of the UV depends on the model size, we need to press Ctrl+A and select Apply Scale or Apply All Transforms. Great! We cut all the parts of the model, and now we can move on to the puzzle part of the process. First, I'm placing a face part. As you can see, I stretch and scale her eyelids, so when she blinks, we will have an additional texture space on them. That way, her closed eyes will look really good. I'm selecting everything else and in the UV menu, choosing Average Island Scale to ensure that my UVs are in the right size to each other. I'm scaling the inner part of her eyes and mouth cavity, moving them aside and starting to place the other UV islands. Don't forget to leave some space between your UVs. Oh, I realized that I had forgotten to make retopology of her tail. Sting tail. Let me do that fast. I'm moving UV islands and adding the sting tail to the others. And also, I don't really like penetrating parts, so I will attach it to her body. And now is the final part. I'm renaming all the parts. Low poly ones will have _low on the end of the name, and the high poly ones _high. Naming like that will help us a lot when we will be baking our textures. And done! In the next part we will work in the Substance Painter. Thank you very much. See you very soon. Bye bye.